So if you're watching this and there's a good chance you're either an operator or an offer owner who wants to scale their offer on cold traffic with ridiculously profitable ads. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down everything you need within your offer, within your team, basically everything you possibly need to scale your offer to multiple six figures on completely cold traffic. And just so you know that everything I'm saying here is completely legit, here are some of the social proof guys who I can publicly say we work with. Now, with that said, let's dive right into it. How to scale an offer on cold traffic to 250K per month. So the first thing we need to understand is what funnel do we even select? So there is so many funnels you can choose out there. There's webinars, call funnels, low ticket to high ticket, DME funnels, profile funnels. The list goes on and they can all get you to multiple six, even seven figures per month in some instances. But the thing is, they all come with a list of pros and cons. And the concept when we're running an offer on cold traffic, something you need to understand is that everything about cold traffic is buying data. It's all about getting through the initial kinks with the offer as quickly as possible. Because when you launch an offer on cold traffic for the first time, especially, it's never just going to be a thing of you write the ads, you launch the offer, and then everything is running smoothly and fine. It's never going to happen. You may be profitable when you first launch, but more than likely you'll be at a 2, 3, 4x with a lot of things you could do a lot better on the front end. So with that said, you want to choose a funnel that can give you feedback cycles and give you data extremely fast, which is why 9 times out of 10, when we're first launching an offer on cold traffic, my personal favorite funnel to run is a call funnel. Now, later in this video, we'll talk about scaling with call funnels and webinars and scaling with 2 conversion mechanisms. But when we're trying to get an offer just to its first 200K, 250K per month, it's very easy to do that. And oftentimes the most efficient way to do that is by running a call funnel, because you're going to be able to work out those first initial kinks on the offer way quicker. So let's just talk about call funnels real quick. The reason, once again, we choose a call funnel is because number one, the numbers on a call funnel are dead simple. So if we look at a call funnel here, these are the numbers. You have CPM, CTR, mainly just conversion rate on the page right here, cost per call, the amount of calls that get kept, aka calls that don't cancel, show rate, close rate, AOV, and then from there you have your ROAS. There is not a lot of drop-off points when you compare this to something like a webinar funnel, making this inherently a very simple funnel to understand. And more importantly, we'll go into this later as well, but it makes it very easy to understand where the constraint is when these are your only numbers. So once again, simple funnel economics. Now the next thing, and more importantly, fast feedback cycles. When you compare a call funnel to something like a webinar funnel, where you have 1 to 2 week promotion timelines, it can take oftentimes, once again, 2 weeks for you to get to the point to where people are actually getting on calls with your sales team from the point of beginning promotion. Comparing that to a call funnel where calls are constantly being booked 2 to 3 days out. When you first launch a call funnel and throughout your entire time of running a call funnel, you are constantly getting data. Calls are always being booked 2 to 3 days out with your sales team, meaning you're in this constant cycle of call gets booked, your sales team talks to them, and then you get the feedback. Excuse this really bad feedback cycle, but this is essentially what you're in right here. Now, this allows you to initially work out those first few kinks on your offer very quickly, because when you first launch, you'll immediately know what your CPMs are. You'll immediately know what your cost per call is. You'll immediately get qualitative feedback from your sales team, from your setters, from your closers on what lead quality is like, how responsive are the leads, are the leads even picking up their phones, what's the show rate, the close rate. You'll get all this data in a week, which is way faster than you typically would if you were to run something like a webinar or challenge funnel. So once again, this is why I like call funnels. It is just simply the best funnel to run if you want to validate an offer. Now, moving on to the offer. So this is something a ton of people mess up on. If you try to take an offer, a bad offer on cold traffic, you are going to run into so many issues. It's not going to work. So right now in the info space, the markets are a lot more sophisticated than they used to be. Everyone knows that. We can all agree on that. And on top of that, the typical biz op structure of selling live coaching calls and course curriculum is not as appealing as it used to be as well. So before I continue, what I would say is if you already have a funnel that's working and you already have an offer that you're confident in and you have proof of concept in and you want to get into the more tactical things, I would just skip down later into this video. We get a bit more tactical later down here. But for those of you who feel like you may have an offer issue or you don't know if your offer will convert on paid, I would stick around. So here's a few signs that your offer, if you're scaling on paid traffic right now, you have an offer issue. So number one, low pickup rates. If overall your leads are just not picking up the phone no matter what you do with your sales team, maybe an offer issue. Same thing with low show rates. If your sales team is calling leads within the first 5 to 10 minutes and no matter what you do, they may just not care about your offer enough. This goes hands in hand with not a lot of intent with the leads. If your leads just simply don't care about your offer, they're getting on calls, they don't really care about you, the offer, or anything, they're just kind of showing up with not a lot of intent, probably an offer issue. And overall, if it just feels like you're running uphill to get your sales metrics within KPI, if it feels like you're running uphill, trying to push a boulder uphill to get your sales metrics within KPI, probably an offer issue as well. So number one thing is you can't outmarket a bad offer. So it's really important you get this step right. Now, when we're talking about creating an offer that you can take and scale on cold traffic, one of the biggest levers you can pull is offer positioning, aka changing the leads, changing the ICP who you actually sell to. So this is by far one of the biggest levers you can pull. And a great example of this is John Madsen. So John Madsen, if you're not familiar with him, he runs a fitness offer. He could have taken the general path that everyone takes of run a fitness offer, have the positioning of I'll help you lose, 12 pounds of fat in 3 months, and run that on cold traffic. And in reality, that probably wouldn't have worked. But he positioned his offer, targeted corporate professionals making $150,000 a year. And this did two things for him. Number one, it carved out his own segment of the fitness niche. And number two, it allowed him to sell to a way more affluent demographic, which therefore allows him to sell at a higher price and therefore have a higher AOV, which ultimately allows him to significantly outbid his competitors because he charges more. Now, another great example of this is Parker J. Smith. He runs a remote home service offer. This is typically, if you're not familiar with this, a typical biz op offer, but he repositioned this to be more of an investment opportunity offer, repositioned it to corporate professionals and investors. And I believe now he charges near like $25,000, which is insane. His AOV is significantly higher than all of his competitors. So therefore he can outbid all of his competitors by tenfold because he sells to a way higher income lead. Now the pattern here is if you can sell to a lead that has higher purchasing power, it is going to change everything for you. So something you want to keep in mind is you want to AOV max. You want to try to get your AOV on your offer as high as possible. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to just sell your offer to a lead that has more money. A lot of people are stuck selling to leads who have $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to the name and are scaling with Clarity Pay, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if you want to be able to charge $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for packages, you need to sell to an affluent demographic. So once again, if you can sell to, for example, like these guys, corporate professionals or investors, you can charge more. You can deal with a more responsible lead because these are people who are corporate professionals. They're more responsible in their day-to-day life than your typical biz op lead, which overall means you'll probably see higher show rates. You'll probably see better sales team metrics on the front end. And this becomes critical later for, once again, AOV maxing and having a better CAC to LTV. Now, the third lever you can pull when differentiating yourself in competitive markets and overall creating a better offer is having a unique mechanism. So for example, if you have a wholesale real estate offer or you have a drop shipping offer, you're inherently in a competitive market. So something you need to do in order to stand out is having a unique mechanism. Now, this doesn't mean just like slapping a fancy name on your process and calling it a day. It means having something inherently unique about your offer or your process that allows you to stand out. And if you have something that is genuinely different from the rest of your competitors and you can effectively convey that within your marketing, that is a big lever you can pull when it comes to marketing, and especially marketing on paid traffic. Now, the last thing I'll note on the offer side of things is scaling with tailwinds versus scaling against headwinds. There are certain offers that scale with tailwinds because, for example, they're riding the tailwind of a macroeconomic trend. This is something like an AI offer. AI is a macroeconomic trend. An AI offer is inherently going to scale with a tailwind. Whereas if you're scaling an SMMA offer, something that is washed, it's something outdated, it's something people generally don't care about anymore, you're going to be scaling with an aggressive headwind. Now, the third thing you need in order to scale an offer profitably on cold traffic is to know your numbers and do a proper bottleneck analysis. So before you ever launch an offer on cold traffic, the first thing, and before you even touch anything, you need to financial model out what your numbers need to be in order to be profitable. So this would be your numbers on a call funnel. Take your numbers, financial model them out for a worst case of a 1.5x, a tolerable case of a 2.5x, a best case of say a 4 to a 5x. Put your real numbers in here from maybe you're running your offer on organic or you've been running paid before. Put them in here and financial model out what your numbers need to be in order to hit this ROAS. Now, when you do this, it's going to do two things for you. Number one, it's going to tell you if you should even begin to run paid in the first place. A lot of you guys may put your numbers in here from your past experience running your offer, and you'll see that, for example, if you have a 1500 AOV, running it profitably on a call funnel or any funnel really is going to be extremely difficult, and you probably should not even begin to run paid to begin with until you get your AOV up. Now, the second thing it's going to do is when you begin running ads to your offer, it's going to allow you to know the numbers like the back of your hand. It's going to allow you to know what your numbers need to be exactly to the T in order to be profitable, which is once again going to allow you to be in a way better spot. So when you actually start getting your data back, you'll know whether your numbers are within KPI or not. Now, once you get that first data, that first week of running it, you're going to have a lot of data back. So what you need to do is you need to do a simple bottleneck analysis with that real data, plug it into a financial model like this, and do a simple bottleneck analysis and see where the biggest constraint is. Now, this is another reason why I like running a call funnel, is because doing a bottleneck analysis on a call funnel is very easy. And the way I view all these things is it's very linear. And what I mean by that is, for example, if the conversion rate on your page, this thing right here is the bottleneck. For example, in this case, if this was a 0.5% conversion rate on the page, this would be the bottleneck. And if that is the bottleneck, then 100% the bottleneck is on the page. So in order to get this up, I would be split testing new headlines. I would be looking at the VSL engagement. I would be looking at the application application and looking out for areas on the application where there is tons of drop off. Another example is if your CTR is the bottleneck. Maybe your CTR on your ads is under 1%. You may need new ads. You may need new hooks. You may just need better ads. You may need better targeting on your ads overall. Every one of these metrics within your call funnel is going to have a certain solution in order to fix that bottleneck, which is why running a call funnel is inherently relatively simple. Now, another example of this is when you're doing your bottleneck analysis. If you find your cost per call is, for example, $250, what you realize is the bottleneck is an aggregate of all of these three metrics up here. So you need to go and you need to look at all these three metrics and find out where the bottleneck is within these three. So once again, all this stuff is pretty linear and it's all relatively easy to do. Now, the last thing I'll note on this section is a lot of the times when you're doing this bottleneck analysis, it's going to come down to either your AOV is too low or your cost per call is too high. This is something a lot of people get stuck on. And what a lot of people spend so much time on is trying to lower their cost per call instead of just trying to simply increase their AOV. Now, the issue with this is that, yes, it's good to get a lower cost per call, and that can help dramatically when you're trying to be more profitable. But in some situations, you may only be able to drop your cost per call by 20 to 30%, and your time is likely way better spent trying to increase your AOV. And a way to do this could just be by simply raising your prices if you think that's fit. Another way to do this would be selling continuation to your leads in the backend. So now moving into section 4, how do you tactically launch your ads and do everything with the VSL, the landing page, etc., to scale your offer on paid traffic? Now, this is something that's also applicable to something like a webinar funnel. A core concept that I stick to every single time I launch a call funnel or a webinar funnel is that when I launch it on Cold Traffic, I always write the longest form copy first. For this instance, if we're running a call funnel, that means I'm going to write the VSL first. And the reason I do this is because I would way rather rewrite a batch of ads or rewrite an email sequence than rewrite the VSL. So I treat the VSL like the control variable, which means I spend a lot of time making the VSL or the webinar good, making sure all the angles within the VSL or the webinar are really well thought of. And then what I do is I write the ads, I write the email sequences, and I write everything based around the angles in the VSL so that the VSL is, once again, essentially the control variable within this process. Now, another reason this is very important is because on the marketing side of things, you want everything to be extremely congruent. You don't want your ads saying one thing, your VSL saying another thing, and then your email sequences saying a different thing. It's not going to work. You need everything from your ads, your VSLs to your emails, and everything very congruent throughout the entire process. So just to be clear, I write the long form copy first, which in this instance is VSL. Then I use the VSL to write ads and email sequences. Now, tactically, what I do when I'm initially launching a batch of ads is I will do one CBO, 3 ad sets, around 20 ads total. Now, what this looks like is I'll treat each ad set as a test. So one ad set, for example, could be testing a different ICP. Another ad set could test a different ICP. Really, all you're doing here is you're using each ad set as a test to see which ad set and which awareness level or which ICP or which marketing angle, whatever you're testing for, converts the best for that offer. And obviously, this is very dependent on the offer you're running. Now, the reason I do this is because this allows me to get data on which awareness level, which ICP, whatever it is that I'm testing for, works the best, and then I can scale into that winning ad set. Now, in terms of the landing page and the application, the landing page is extremely important. So everything, once again, must be congruent with the ads and the VSL like we talked about. Even your headline must be congruent with the ads and the VSL. Everything must be congruent throughout the entire process. So a simple framework you can use for a headline on your offer is just simply an outcome plus timeline with the outcome and pain points. Now, a little tip here is if your bottleneck is the conversion rate on the page and you need to split test more headlines to get the conversion rate on your page better, what you can do is you can take the main angle from your best performing ads and make that headline congruent with the angle and, once again, the best performing ads. And oftentimes that will get the conversion rate up a little bit. Now, the next thing on the page is the application. You just want to keep this simple. You want to be careful about adding too much friction. This is kind of where if your cost per call is extremely cheap and your lead quality is really bad because you're booking too many calls, you can add more friction. But if your cost per call is really high because you have so many questions and you're having way too much friction, you can take out less friction. So you can play around with that here in the application. Now, additionally, here in the application, this is where you set up pixel conditioning. So what this means is if you're using something like Typeform, what you can do is you can set up conditional logic, which basically allows you to only pixel condition for the qualified leads, so the people who actually meet the financial qualification to invest with your offer and book a call. And if people are still booking calls, but they don't meet that full financial investment, maybe they book a call and they say they only have $1,000 to $2,000 to put down, what you can do is you can just send those people to a different thank you page that doesn't have the pixel on it. So that way you're not actually sending those people back to the pixel. Now let's talk about a cold traffic VSL, because a lot of people try to run their organic VSL on cold traffic and then they wonder why it doesn't convert. When running a cold traffic VSL, you need to do a lot more selling. And in specific, the leads need to be sold on these 3 specific things. So first, they need to be sold on the offer itself. The second thing they need to be sold on is you as the offer owner and why they should learn with you to begin with. Now, the third thing they need to be sold on is the opportunity overall and why it's a good time to start this opportunity right now. Now, what I would say about VSLs is you don't need to make these absolutely perfect for them to work on cold traffic. If you have a good offer and your ads are good, The VSL doesn't need to be 100%, doesn't need to be an A plus VSL. You can get away with having, for example, a B plus VSL and still make it work on cold traffic. Where the VSL becomes really an issue is if your engagement rate is, say, below 20%, your play rate on the VSL is below 10%, and overall the leads are showing up to calls not properly framed. That's where you want to likely changing your VSL to optimize for more engagement and a better play rate. Now, another thing you can do within your Typeform application is routing the leads who don't have the full amount to actually invest in your offer. Maybe they say they have under $1,000 to invest. Typically, these would be leads that you would DQ. But what you can do is you can route these DQ leads to either book a call with your setters, or just send them to a thank you page on the Typeform and have your setters hammer them and try to sell them a downsell. Maybe it's a $500 or a $1,000 downsell. Now, this is very good for liquidating ad spend. If you can liquidate 30% of your ad spend, by doing this, you're going to be way more profitable. I'll go more into this later, but this is something you can do as well. Now, moving on to the pre-call process, this is something you absolutely need in order to scale an offer profitably on cold traffic with the call funnel, because you need to think about the people who just booked a call with you. They just took a large action, and now they are going to be in information scanning mode, trying to figure out if they should actually take the time to work with you and figure out if you're legit or if you're just full of shit. So having a strong pre-call process is going to be the backbone for increasing show rate and getting leads to actually show up to calls properly framed. Now, the first part of having a good pre-call process is the thank you page. There's a few elements to having a good thank you page. The first is obviously going to be the main thank you video. After they book a call, what video do they watch? Now, in this video, what you should be doing is obviously you should be setting the frame for the call. But on top of that, if you're running a BizOp offer, something you should be doing is creating urgency for why they should actually care about this business model right now. If there's a legitimate reason on why they should start your business model in 2026 right now, create urgency for that. And by doing that, you will ultimately get your leads to show up at a higher rate. Now, on top of that, another best practice on the thank you page is having breakout videos and social proof. So the breakout video's job is oftentimes to just overcome the most common objections and questions. And a way you can figure out the most common objections and questions for your specific offer is just by taking 20 to 30 sales calls, throwing it into a Claude project, asking Claude, what are my most common objections and questions, coming up on sales calls in a setting order of frequency, and then making individual breakout videos about the most common ones. Now, the second part about having a good pre-call process is your pre-call resources. So what are you actually sending to leads before they get on a call? Are you sending them YouTube videos, for example? Are you sending them testimonial videos? You need to make sure that you're intentional about the videos you're sending your leads, and you need to stay on top of your setters to make sure they're actually sending them these videos. Now, the third part is an email flow. So you absolutely 110% need a pre-call email sequence. So in this email sequence, you're basically going to continuously sell them on the opportunity. You're going to continuously sell them on why they should learn from you, and continuously sell them on the offer. Once again, you're selling them on the same three things you sell them on the VSL within the email sequence, and also adding social proof throughout the email sequence as well. Now, another thing you should be doing within your pre-call process is leveraging paid ads, once again, in the pre-call process. So this is a huge Jeremy Haynes thing, but hammer them ads to, one, frame leads before they actually get on the call with your sales team, but two, this will allow you to scoop up leads who landed on the page but did not book a call. Now, another thing to keep in mind with this whole pre-call process is that what you will find is you're going to be constantly auditing the sales process. So you're going to be doing things like auditing the setters and asking yourself, how quickly are the setters actually reaching out to new leads? Are they hitting them within the first 5 to 10 minutes? What are they actually saying to the leads on their initial text? Are they just sending out some generic text, or are they sending out a text that's actually personalized? And overall, just auditing the whole process and asking yourself, is this something that could be done better? And doing the same thing with the closers. So asking yourself, what are the closers saying in the group chats with their leads? Are they canceling qualified leads because they didn't watch every pre-call video and because they didn't watch the VSL? Keeping your eye on the sales team and watching these things carefully is really important, because what you'll find is a lot of times there's going to be sales reps that don't hit leads quick enough. You're going to have closers that cancel leads because they don't watch every pre-call video and they're just very lazy. So keeping your thumb on the pulse of how the sales team side is performing is going to give you a lot of data on whether your leads just aren't showing up because you have a marketing issue, or if it's because your sales team is just underperforming. Now, moving on to some of the more nuanced tactical things you can do to scale your offer to $250K a month and beyond on cold traffic. Number one is adding a downsell. I personally love these, and if you can recoup 20, 30, 40% of your ad spend by selling a downsell, you are so much more profitable. So the way this is set up is on your Typeform, typically you're going to ask a question of how much risk capital or how much do you have available to invest into the program. Now, typically when you ask this question, you're only going to allow the people who have, say, 1 to 3K, 3 to 5K, or 5 to 7K in this instance to actually book a call on your high ticket calendar. Whereas the people who are 0 to 1K are either going to be disqualified because they're broke, or you're going to ask them their credit qualifications. Now, the point here is that the leads who you would typically DQ, the people who don't have the financial requirements to book a high ticket call, that you typically just send to a thank you page on your Typeform. In this instance, you would allow them to either, one, book a call with your setter, or two, now you have your setter go immediately dial them and try to sling them a downsell. Now your downsell offer could either be a $500 offer or a $1,000 offer, and just have it be course curriculum. But the point is when you do this right, you could be selling $2,000, $3,000 a day or more of downsell cash alone, which allows you to liquidate so much of your ad spend just by having a simple downsell offer. So now, once again, not to harp on this point a ton, but if you can just recoup 30% of your cash from downsells, it helps so much when scaling it on paid. Now, the next thing you can do when you're trying to scale your call funnel is use the feedback from your sales team. So the best part about running a call funnel is the feedback loops, right? You get super quick feedback loops. And when you can use that feedback and you can implement it in a matter of 2-3 days to constantly iterate and constantly improve the front end, you get this cycle where you're constantly improving the front end, getting feedback, constantly improving things, and it allows you to work out those kinks very, very quickly. A common mistake people make is they'll get these feedback cycles, the closers will tell them about it, and then they just won't do anything about it. It just stops the flow. But if you can actually get the feedback from your sales team, implement a change on it to work on it, you should be seeing close rates and show rates continuously going up as you scale the offer week over week. Now, as for the email flows, the flows that you want is you want an applied no-book, a pre-call, a no-show, and a long-term nurture. Now, the applied no-book is from the partial submissions on Typeform. So these are the people who went through the Typeform but didn't book a call. They get put through their own separate email sequence, pushing them to get back and book a call on the calendar. Now, the pre-call emails, these are very obvious, and we already touched on these. These are obviously just getting sent to the people before they even get on the call. The no-show, these are for the people who no-show the call. We are sending them their own individual email sequence that pushes them to get them to re-engage and rebook their call. Now, the long-term nurture, this is for the conglomerate of all of these people after their flows have ended. They get pushed into this long-term nurture if they haven't closed, and we hammer these people for 60, 70, 80 plus days with emails every single day. And the point here is just to continuously nurture them, keep them in our list, and also CTA them to book a call as well. Now, the last part of this whole video is once you get a call funnel and the call funnel is making 200K, 250K a month, the last thing you should be doing is looking into scaling with another conversion mechanism. So oftentimes we are looking at scaling with something like a webinar, and on top of that, with your call funnel, adding back an Ascension to maximize your LTV. And so I'm going to go more in depth on both of these things. Now, the point of scaling with two funnels is, yes, it is inherently a little bit more complicated to have two funnels, and obviously it is to just scale with one. But the reason scaling with two is very effective is because when you only limit your customers and your leads to one way to enter your ecosystem, for example, if you're running a call funnel, it's a very direct way to enter your ecosystem, but you're only limiting to people who are going to book a call, watch a 14-minute VSL, and then buy, which is likely going to be a small part of your audience. Some of your leads are likely going to prefer to watch 2 hours of content, 3 hours of content, which is why webinar is going to essentially capture that bucket of your audience. So when you have a two funnel approach, you're essentially allowing yourself to capture more of your leads, more of your total addressable market into your offer. So when do you actually look at adding a second conversion mechanism? So when you've reached 250K a month, if you feel like there's a lot of meat left on the bone for that funnel, and you feel like you would still ride that funnel out to maybe 300K, 400K a month, by all means do it. But if you feel like you're kind of capping your funnel out at 250K a month and it's getting pretty hard to scale and you're seeing some diminishing returns as you scale the spend, that would be a good time to implement a second conversion mechanism, something like a webinar, and start scaling with two conversion mechanisms. Now, another tactical thing you can do when you're scaling your offer is implementing internal webinars. So these are great for two reasons. Now, number one, if you're struggling with longer sales cycles, maybe you have a 2-call close and you're trying to get this down, if you run a weekly internal webinar, oftentimes what you're going to find is the leads who booked a call who haven't shown up to the call yet, and also the leads who booked a call and are maybe in between that and their second call, they are going to show up to this internal webinar, and essentially they will spend 60 minutes to 90 minutes getting informed on the opportunity, getting sold on the offer and why they should learn from the offer owner, and ultimately getting more nurtured from this webinar. And then by the time they show up to their call, or maybe it's a 2-call close process and they show up to their second call, overall they are way more nurtured. Now, the second thing this does is this allows you to scoop up a bunch of old leads. So when you hit the entire CRM with a text blast, an email blast of active leads, old leads, no shows, everyone who engaged with your offer in the past, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to scoop up a lot of the old leads that maybe no-showed their call or a long-term follow-up, and they'll show up to this, and you can scoop up those leads and ultimately get those leads to re-engage and book another call as well. Now, in terms of back-end Ascension, this is really important because once again, everything about scaling an offer comes down to CAC to LTV. How much do you pay for a customer and how much do you get from that customer? So when you can implement things like ascending existing older students who see success in your offer into a higher ticket offer, something like a done for you offer, and you can sell them that done for you offer for 5 or 10K, you can significantly increase your LTV. Another example of this is selling continuation. So for example, if your offer is 6 months long and they still want to be in your offer after that 6 months period, you can sell them continuation on the back end, which once again ultimately increases your LTV. Now, what I would say is focusing on maximizing your LTV in the very beginning isn't really going to be the best use of your time unless it's the biggest bottleneck, but these are more things you do later down the line and when you're trying to essentially fill every gap in your offer. But overall, those are the biggest levers if you're trying to scale an offer on completely cold traffic to hit 250K per month. If you like this video and you thought some of the stuff I talked about was helpful, please please do leave a like. And if you're running an offer on paid and you feel like there's a certain bottleneck on your ads, feel free to book a call with me down below, and I'm happy to do a free audit of your ad account if you feel like there's something that's stopping you from being able to scale.